Hello. So, I don't know if anybody's around, but I thought it could be fun just to chat for a little bit. I am getting ready to go to a meeting in a little while, and I had a little bit of time, so I thought we could chat a little bit. I enjoy doing my pre recorded videos on Tuesdays and Fridays, but I thought it could be fun sometimes to throw in a live chat here and there. Sometimes we just have things we like to talk about. So I thought for a little while, I can kind of talk about some of my experiences with first getting clean. I know that a few people had said they liked hearing stories about my past and how I got into the program. Um, oh, I'm gonna have to shut off notifications. Hold on. Let me know if you hear that buzzing when I get notifications on things. Do you guys hear that? Because if so, I'll stop it. Hey Jeff, how are you? So, what I'd like to talk about is kind of things regarding my early recovery. I feel like a lot of what I talk about is kind of how I approach recovery now after having over 6 years. And I want to make sure that I'm still relatable to people who are new in recovery. So, I thought I could discuss kind of how things were for me when I first got into recovery and some of the feelings I had. Um, I still remember the very first 12-step program meeting I ever went to when I was thinking about getting clean. And I remember this was probably, let's see, it was probably October. No, I don't know. It was, let's say, 6 months before I got clean. And I remember I walked in, I sat down, and I cried the whole meeting. Now, to be fair, I think I showed up at the meeting hoping that somebody had something that would make my withdrawals go away. So my intentions on going to the meeting weren't exactly pure. But I sat in that meeting and I felt so sick and I cried like the whole meeting. And when it was over, like nobody talked to me and I was like, this place is stupid. And I left. Um, Luckily, the next day I decided to try again and I went to a different 12-step meeting, same program, just a different location. And it was a completely different experience. I was like hugged when I walked into the room. People were like super friendly and nice and made me feel really welcomed. People talked to me after the meeting. And although it wasn't enough to like make me want to get and stay clean at the time, I at least knew that when I was going to make that decision to like actually get off drugs, that like that was a place that I felt comfortable going to. And so I always tell people like regardless of what recovery program you choose to do, I think it's important to never judge a program based on your first experience with it. Because sometimes, especially like I know for myself, like my perceptions of things were really warped at the beginning. There were times where like I was so insecure that if somebody looked at me, I assumed they were judging me. I assumed they were looking down on me, when in reality, they were just looking at me because like maybe they thought I needed a friend. So I think that what was the thing that okay, what was my rock bottom? That's a great question. My rock bottom wasn't like an emotional one. Yeah, exactly. You can find what you need. Any way that works, I think is great. Like I don't judge programs. But yeah, so my rock bottom was more of like an emotional rock bottom than a physical rock bottom. I had already become separated from my ex-husband. We ended up getting back together after that, and then now we're divorced. But I had, we had split custody of the kids. I was living in an apartment. So like life wasn't great, but that wasn't what was I was so sick and tired of waking up sick. Like I hated the feeling of waking up in withdrawal. I hated having to sit in the car for hours and hours and hours like trying to find the next one because I didn't know where to get drugs. So I had to rely on like other people who got them from other people. So like it was a process and I wasn't making enough money to support my habit. It was a hot mess, and so I was on my way out to dinner with a friend. And my ex-husband, who we were separated at the time, sends me a text message and said, "I found you a bed in a rehab. Do you want to go?" And he happened to catch me like at a moment where I was like, I was ready for help, and I was like, yes. And I was like, so I'll come over tomorrow morning. And he was like, no, if you're going to the rehab, like you're coming over right now and you're staying here and I'll drive you in the morning. And what's so funny is that next morning, and I did, and I convinced him to like give me enough stuff to stay high the whole time, because I was like, I can't possibly go into rehab and withdrawal. Like that would be crazy. I mean, that was the messed up thinking I had. And on our way in the morning, like the kids are in the back of the car, he's driving me to rehab. And we stopped at a gas station so I could get a soda for the ride. And there's two people at the gas station who rode together, and one was in the car and one was inside, and they were both nodding out. Like the guy was like nodding out, like clearly high as a kite, like in the store, right? And I remember being like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that that guy is going to get behind the wheel of a car and drive." Right? He's nodding out. He's like high as a kite, like and I'm like, how could he do that? Now keep in mind, that's exactly what I used to do regularly, right? Like I would get high and then I would drive. That's what I did, right? So to see somebody else do that, and I was blown away. I was like, I can't believe that they would have the audacity to get behind the wheel. Like that was any different than what I had done. We followed this car. We called the police. We followed the car. Like, I'm on my way to rehab and I'm following a car because the guy's clearly high. And I'm like, we can't do anything if they're high, right? So I realize now, like, how sick and crazy that was. I mean, can you imagine? Like, I'm on my way to rehab, ratting out a guy who's driving high. I mean, the insanity of addiction is beyond words. So obviously we were driving town to town to town, so the police were like, well, what road are you, like we kept switching to, it became like nothing came of it. We ended up hanging up and it was, oh well. But I was ready. I was ready. And like, had I not gotten that text message saying like I have a bed for you to rehab at that moment, I'm not sure it would have went, because it happened to be at a time that I was like really ready to go. And that was really the beginning of a new way of life for me. um getting getting help when you need it, because I think that's a big point in recovery, right? Like help's always available to us, like it's always there. It's a matter of if we want it or not. And like a lot of times, like we're not ready for the help when it's there for us. We have to really want it. Like I've heard a lot of times people say recovery is for people who want it, not for people who need it, because a lot of people need it and they never find their way into recovery. So you have to want to get better. And if you want to get better, like the options are endless. Besides like they have rehabs, there's 12-step programs, there's religious programs, there's psychiatries there. I mean, there's everything there. And so even if one program doesn't work for you, like there's so many options. And like I found an option that worked for me. Like I'm personally a member of a 12-step program, and for me, that's been the most helpful way. But I've seen people get clean using lots of different programs, and I don't discredit any of them. The way I look at it is like, you have to find what works for you. And if what's working for you is keeping you clean, then by all means, like, don't worry about what anybody else says. You do you, right? Yeah, of course. Sometimes, and I think what's hard is like, especially now with like the opioid crisis, is the problem is that people die before they're ready. And before, when the drugs were like, I hate to say it, but like cocaine and crack, chances were you weren't going to die before you found help. You may have, but statistically it wasn't as common. Whereas if your drug of choice now is opiates or heroin, your chances of dying before you get help are so much higher. And I think that that's why there's been such a push to let people know that recovery exists, because we don't want you to die before you can get to the help. And the problem a lot of times too, when people relapse whose drug of choice is heroin, opiates, like in that realm, is that they use one time and they die. Like if your drug of choice is marijuana and you relapse, like you may have to start over, but you're not going to die from it. Opiates are killing people. And so your chances of recovering are so much, like we're talking, addiction's always been a life or death issue, right? Like I don't think anybody will argue that. And but I think with the opioids, like what we've learned is that like the death rate can be so much higher. And that's hard. Like that's really, really difficult for people to understand, because it doesn't matter. Like I know for me, you couldn't have told me that you need to get clean or you're going to die. Like my thought was like what everybody else's is. Like that's not going to happen to me. Like that may be for that person, where that person may OD, but it's not going to be me. I know how to use. I know what I can take, right? Like I think that's how we all end up feeling. So I would say that most people who end up overdosing and dying don't think that they will, and there's nothing you can tell people. There's nothing I can say to somebody who's using to be like, if you don't get clean, you're going to die. They'll be like, okay. Because most people, well, I'll speak just for myself. When you get to that point where you're using every day and your whole life is about using, like you don't really care whether you're going to die or not. In fact, you hear a lot of people talk about the fact that they wish they would just die because they were tired of living that life and they didn't know what else to do. I think help needs to be, it's not that help's not available, but it is hard sometimes to get to. I think a lot of people need medical help in regards to whether it be rehabs or medical assisted treatment in some ways. Although I think 12-step programs and things like that are great, I do think that for some people, like there needs to be a detox process. And so getting into a detox is not always easy, whether it's because you don't have insurance or you don't have money or you just can't find a bed. I mean, those are all real problems that people deal with. So, I don't ever want someone to feel like they're doing something wrong because they're not choosing help right now, because that's a hard choice. Yeah, people die from opiates all the time. Yeah, and it's hard. Like I had one of my really close friends a couple years ago die 4 months after he relapsed, and that was a really really hard thing to deal with. I knew his son, I knew his wife. His 8-year-old son was the one who found him. I actually did a video on it. Maybe after I post this, I'll like leave a. I always get confused. I think it's here. I'll leave a link to that video where I talk about his death. But yeah, I can imagine being a professional in the field is really difficult because you get to know people and you want to help them and you want to see them succeed. And when they don't make it, like it's almost like you feel like a failure. Like I feel like that sometimes, like even being an addict, like in a 12-step program, like when you see people that you're trying to help and they don't succeed, you feel like you failed them. Like you feel like, well, had I done more, had I called them more, had I listened more, Thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciate it. There is a small recovery community here on YouTube, and I do talk to a lot of the people who make channels, and I think it's sad. I would really, really love to see like more people watch my videos. Like one, obviously, because it feels good when people watch your videos, but two, like I really feel like I've gotten so much feedback from people that says like they wish they could talk about their addiction, but they're just not in a place to do so. And I love the fact that I am in a place where I'm comfortable talking about my addiction, talking about my recovery, and I want other people to feel like they can relate to the things I'm saying. We're not all going to have the same story. We're not all going to have the same experience, but I think a lot of the feelings are the same. And I have to apologize for like the focus going in and out, the lighting. It's getting late in the day, as you can tell. So the lighting being a little less strong is messing with my phone camera because I don't have a fancy camera. I'm not all, I'm not fancy like that. I use my phone and I don't have a viewer, so I have to do it selfie style so I can make sure that I'm in frame. So, well, the aliens have come. Well, there you go. I knew it was bound to happen. The most difficult thing that I had to deal with when entering rehab, I think, was being away from my kids. My kids are always like number one for me, and I was their primary caregiver all their lives. And to be away from them for 28 days was incredibly difficult. I felt like a bad mom. I felt like I was abandoning them. I felt like it was hard for me to justify that rehab was the right place for me because I had left them. I can look back now and be like, oh my gosh, that was the smartest thing I ever did, right? Like leaving my kids for a month for them to have a healthy mom now, like they don't even really remember when I was in rehab because it was so long ago. So my kids are 12 and 9 now, so they were 6 and 3. So they barely even remember it. So that was probably the hardest thing. I was really ready for help when I went into rehab. Like I wasn't one of those people forced in. I didn't get court ordered in. Like I had an opportunity to go and I was ready and I was willing to do whatever they told me to do. I didn't care if they told me to jump, my answer was how high, because I didn't want to live a life using drugs anymore. I wanted the withdrawal to go away, and then I wanted to like not feel the obsessive thing to use. um I went to rehab. I am 6.5 years clean from opiates. I was really, really into painkillers and really anything opiate related. Um, Now, I never turned down any drugs really, but that was the drug I had like the biggest problem with. So I went to rehab, and my clean date is November 6th, 2012. And yeah, I went to a 28-day rehab, and now I'm a member of a 12-step program, and I work that. My specific channel here and what I talk about is my experience. It's not like 12-step program like literature or anything like that. It's just my experience with addiction and recovery, because that's really all I can offer people is what I've been through. Yeah, I've done all of it, Rob. I That was something I did like a long time ago, like way back. Not something I had a problem with later in life, but pretty much anything that you can name was something I had tried at some point in my life, you know. Um at least you couldn't get a toothache. Well, believe it or not, using messed the hell up out of my teeth, and I don't they're bad, and I had them fixed twice. Um but being on opiates does not mean that you don't get toothaches, believe it or not. They actually can mess up your teeth a whole lot, because I used to grind my teeth and you get dry mouth, which causes your teeth to rot. It's not good. So, I had a lot of toothaches actually. It was actually a great way to get opiates when I was using. Yeah, I agree. Our experience helps others. Look, if all yeah, painkillers are rough. All I can do is offer my experience, right? And I learned from other people sharing their experience. You know, like we may not all have the same story or have the same problems, right? But a lot of us have gone through the same feelings. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I want to keep the life I have today, and I would love others to experience the opportunity to get clean. Like if you're still struggling, if you're an addict and you don't think you can get clean, like you can. Is it work? Yes. Is it hard? Yes. Is it worth it? 100%. Um I didn't think I'd ever get clean. I didn't think that that was an option. And I'll tell you this, I definitely didn't think I would ever enjoy life again. Even when I was in rehab, like I believed that maybe I could get clean, but I didn't think I'd ever be happy again. Like I thought I was just going to be miserable forever. Like I believed that using like messing up the part of my brain that could feel happiness, and that I was just going to be miserable or like feel nothing. Like I thought it was going to be like numb for life because of using so many painkillers. And I can say today like that's not true. Like I really enjoy life today, like a lot. Like I have a great time. I have my kids. And look, life on life's terms like isn't perfect. Like I got I'm getting divorced. You're addicted to milk. Well, I could come up with things that are worse to be addicted to. So maybe that means your bones will be super strong. I mean, I don't think being addicted to anything is a good idea, but if you're going to be like addicted to running or addicted to exercise, it's probably a lot healthier than being addicted to like really bad food or drugs. So, sorry. I should have gotten something to drink before I sat down. But yeah, I think it's the behaviors. Well, there you go. Strong bones is always a good thing. So, I think that, look, being honest about how we feel about things and our experience. Yeah, well, I can't stop eating either. I have a, God, I have like something in my throat. I have a personal trainer who met me through my channel, and he wrote me up a 12-week fitness nutrition plan that I started. Today is the last, well, tomorrow's the last day of week 1. Yeah, Jeff, we can absolutely Skype. I haven't talked to you in a while, so I would love to do that. You just text me, let me know when. Oh my goodness, hold on. I found water. We're all right now. So much better. Sorry. So, but yeah, like, what gets us into recovery is going to be different for each person. Like, nobody's going to be like, oh, well, you need help. Well, look, everybody has their own things that they take or what they like. And, like, I'm not here to judge anybody. I'm not going to judge you for what you take. I'm not going to judge you for your recovery program. Like, I'm not even going to judge you if you choose to troll me, right? Like, that's not who I am. I don't get riled up about people. I don't get riled up about people. I don't say bad things about people. I feel like, you know what? It's usually those that are hurting the most, that are the ones that are unkind, are the ones that need the most attention, stuff like that. So, like, my view is like, you know what? I try to keep everybody welcome here. I don't know. I feel like we need each other. Even dealing with, like, negativity. So, like, there's a lot of negativity online, right? There's tons of times that I have encountered people online who, like, are just online to say cause trouble, right? That's not unlike the real world, right? There's going to be so many times in my actual life where I'm out in the real world where somebody else is having a bad day and they take it out on me, or, you know, someone cuts me off or whatever. I'm going to have to deal with those feelings out in the real world. So I use my experience online and I carry it into the real world too. Well, I don't discriminate against anybody who takes anything. If you're not trying to recover and Adderall is a medication that you need, then, like, I'm not judging that. In fact, somebody, I don't know if they're still in the chat, did a whole video on why Adderall is life-saving for them, while it's addiction, it's really bad for other people. So I don't judge. How do you explain to loved ones of an addict that their behaviors went away? Oh, there we go. But a symptom of their addiction. Yeah, so I think I did a video on that, the inside the mind of an addict. I don't know where it is, but once I post this up, like, officially, I'll add the card for that. The best way I can describe addiction to family members and to other people is this. Let's say you're walking in the desert, and after 3 days you've had no water. And you come up on a stand, and on the table, there's a glass of water. And someone tells you, don't touch that. It's not yours. It's somebody else's. You can't have that water. But you've just been walking in the desert for 3 days. You are going to die of dehydration if you don't drink that water. What do? You don't really care whose water it is. Your body needs it. Everything in you, every survival instinct tells you you need to take it and drink it, right? So addiction works very much the same way. When an addict is in withdrawal, you know what? Adderall saved a lot of people's lives. I know a lot of people who use Adderall after being addicted to other drugs, and it's exactly what they needed to take. So again, I don't judge anybody's process for what it is. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychologist, psychiatrist. I'm nothing. I am a person who recovers from addiction, and I can only share my experience on that. But so imagine now that your body's in withdrawal, your body's in survival mode, right? It's the same thing as if you were walking through the desert looking for water. What your brain is telling you is that you're dying, that you need drugs or you're going to die. And so your whole, everything about your body now, like, you're no longer acting in logic. You're acting in survival. You're no longer thinking things through or thinking how your actions are affecting other people. You're thinking how to survive. So you'll steal money from people, you'll rob a place, you'll lie to people, because everything in you is saying you need that next one to survive. Now, those people who aren't addicts, you can't understand that. Why would you think you need drugs to survive? It sounds counterproductive. But if you look at the science about how the brain works when you're in withdrawal, that's essentially what's happening. Your brain is freaking out. Your brain is saying, you need this, you need this, you need this. The same way your brain would tell you you need water if you haven't had water for 3 days. So the best way to understand is knowing that an addict's choices, their behaviors aren't necessarily indicative of the kind of person they are. Their addiction is running everything. Now, when an addict's in recovery and they're off those substances and they're still doing shady shit, that's a different story. That's because that person needs to find a recovery program and learn how not to follow the same behaviors that they've been following while they've been using, right? But it's hard to explain that feeling, but like I can tell you from personal experience, like when you're in withdrawal, like you will do anything to make that feeling go away. It is so hard for people to quit opiates cold turkey. It's not to say it can't be done, but you're literally like, it's if someone told you, like, you don't really need that water to survive. Wait 4 more days, and your desire for that water will start to go away. You'd be like, what? No, no way. You could never believe that because everything in your body says it's wrong. If you don't want to do this, you feel like you have to in order to survive. Yeah. So like I wouldn't want to steal your money, but I feel like I have to. Like I don't have a choice because I don't have any money and I need to get drugs because my brain is telling me if I don't use them, I'm going to die. Like I don't want to lie to people. I don't want to tell you things like that, but my brain is in self-preservation mode. My brain is saying like you need to lie to them so they don't catch you because you need to go get high, right? It's an awful feeling. And that's why a lot of times when people are high, they'll be like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to use anymore. And it's always when they're high. It's never when they're in withdrawal. And it's because, right, exactly. It's not you. It's the addiction. And like, that's why when people are using and they're high, sorry about the bad camera stuff. But that's why when people are high, like that's when they're like, I really don't want to do this anymore. I want to change. Because their brain's no longer telling them they have to get the next one. So their logic and all that other stuff kicks back in and they feel remorse. And you feel these things. And a lot of times it's just this awful cycle because you mean it. You really want to get better. You really don't want to use anymore. And then you're in withdrawal again. And your brain and survival mode takes over and you can't possibly think anything else but using. It's an awful cycle to be in. And it's definitely one I'm glad I'm not in anymore. I can tell you that after 6 years, I don't think about using in the same way that I used to. I don't wake up wanting to use. I don't go to bed thinking about using, right? But when you're new in recovery, like that is your life. Like you're still learning how to get up each day and not use. So early recovery is hard. That's why having a support network and people who understand where you're at is so important. You need to know you're not alone. You are not the only one struggling. Everybody in early recovery struggles. It's hard for everybody. There is nobody who goes through early recovery and was like, that was a piece of cake. Like that doesn't happen. But all right, well, I need to finish and go get ready for the meeting I'm going to in a little bit. I appreciate you guys listening and checking out what I'm saying. Please feel free to share my channel with anybody you know that may be dealing with addiction who you think may benefit from what I'm saying. I don't know that they will, but if you think they will, like, please share it. I try to keep this channel a safe place, a place where people can come, watch, listen, chat. I do live streams sometimes, but I always upload new videos Tuesday and Friday. And thanks so much, Jeff. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I look forward to talking to you all soon. So